Henry, the king who wanted a son more than anything. Cruel, tyrant, overweight, mad. In his desire for a son, he married 6 times. This is his story. In 1489, the Catholic monarchs signed together with Henry VII the Treaty of Medina del Campo, in which the marriage of Catherine of Aragon and Arthur Tudor was established.
Catalina, gyal hotter than lava. None of them lava coulda describe her. Many man them she wine and grind her. She had a killer.
When Catherine arrived to England, she discovered that she couldn't communicate with Arthur because they had learned different pronunciations of Latin. The 14th of November, Arthur and Catherine of Aragon officially married in London in the St. Paul's Cathedral, being married by William Warham, Bishop of London. After the wedding, Catherine and Arthur moved to live together to Ludlow Castle in Wales. The couple lived happily and everything seemed to be perfect. However, that drastically changed in May 1502. Catherine and Arthur were affected by an unknown disease. Catherine managed to recover from it, but the fate of Arthur was more tragic. He died on the 2nd of April of 1502, when he was only 15 years old. After some research, it was considered a genetic illness which also affected Arthur's nephew, Edward VI of England. The 8th of April, many masses were given in honor of Arthur in the St. Paul's Cathedral and in all the parishes in London. Sometime later, Henry VII and the Catholic kings had thought about a new marriage between Catherine, who was a widow after Arthur's death, and Henry VII's son, Henry VIII. In that way, Henry VII, who was at that moment sick, called the present of his son and told him about the arrangement which had been made for his future in order to maintain the union among Spain and England. In 1509, Henry VII died and was buried in the chapel which he requested to build in the Westminster Abbey. In the same year, and 7 years after the death of Arthur, Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII married in a private ceremony in the Greenwich Church.
Catherine got pregnant several times. Unfortunately, not all of her children survived. Finally, in February 18, 1516, she gave birth to a girl who survived, Mary I. However, Henry was not happy because it was a girl. At the same time, Henry had a mistress, Anne Boleyn, who comforted him. Catherine is with child again. Henry hopes his child is the son he desperately wants. Unfortunately, the baby died. Henry is mad at the church because, even though he had prayed, he still has no heir. At this point, Henry wants to divorce Catherine so he can marry again. Henry grew more impatient with Catherine's inability to produce the male heir he desired, so he told her to go to a convent.
Go to a convent!
God never called me to a nunnery. I am the king's true and legitimate wife.
Henry tells Cardinal Wolsey to go to Rome in order to talk to the Pope about Henry's marriage annulment. The Pope, who was under the influence of Charles V, refused to annul the marriage. Cardinal Wolsey bore the blame and he was removed from his church in 1529. This refusal was the trigger for Henry's rejection of papal supremacy, but there was also many political reasons that led Henry to reject papal control over the governance of England. The Act of Supremacy in 1534 declared that the king was the only supreme head in earth of the Church of England.
When Henry finally got divorced Catherine of Aragon, and consequently the Catholic Church, he was free to marry his already pregnant mistress, Anne Boleyn. The official ceremony took place on 25th January 1533, but it was not recognized until May 1534, when the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, declared Henry and Catherine's marriage invalid and approved Henry and Anne's marriage. He expected that soon his beloved wife will give him a son, but instead she gave him a daughter and 2 dead sons. A few years later, he met the woman who was supposed to be his next wife, Jane Seymour. He soon started to feel attracted by her beauty, and the fact that Anne Boleyn had not given him a son increased his desire to leave her and marry another woman.
Henry had a serious accident during a joust, which caused him a wound in the thigh, and which derived into an ulcer. This prevented him from doing sport and moving a lot, and as a consequence, he started to gain weight.
Henry started to dislike his marriage with Anne Boleyn. He accused her of adultery, even though it is not sure that she cheated on him, and ordered his lords to execute her. Before being executed on 19th May 1536 at 8 o'clock in the morning, Anne said,
To Jesus Christ I commend my soul. Lord Jesus, receive my soul.
"11 days after Anne's execution, Henry married Jane Seymour. In 1537, Jane, unlike the previous wives of Henry, finally gave birth to a boy child, Edward, future King of England and Ireland. However, Jane had serious complications during the labor of her child, and she died 12 days later. This caused a great grief in Henry, as Jane had been her favorite wife and the only one who managed to give him what he most desired, a son.
After Jane Seymour, Henry needed another wife. She would be Anne of Cleves. Thomas Cromwell thought that a political alliance with Germany was good for the kingdom, so he told Henry that Anne of Cleves was very beautiful. Finally, convinced Henry to marry her. When Henry finally met Anne of Cleves, he was shocked because she did not look beautiful or attractive at all. Henry accused Cromwell of lying about Anne's appearance, and Henry was forced to marry Anne even if he did not want to. The 6th of January, 1540, Henry and Anne of Cleves get married. Cromwell is accused of treason and imprisoned in the Tower of London the 28th of July, 1540. There, he was kept alive until the annulment of Henry and Anne's marriage. Henry visits Cromwell in prison and tells him that his marriage had not been consummated. He will use this argument to get a divorce from Anne. Anne finds out that the king wants to divorce her. When Henry tells Anne he wants a divorce, Anne accepts it and agreed to the divorce, calmly and peacefully. The 9th of July, 1540, Henry and Anne got divorced. Henry was really grateful with Anne. He gave her many properties, lands, and she was always welcome in court. She was often called the king's sister due to her good relation with Henry.
After his marriage with Anne of Cleves, Henry met Catherine Howard when his counselors took her to the court. Both soon feel attracted to each other, and it is said that they had sexual relations the same day they met. The attraction was such that after a few days of having met Catherine in court, Henry decided to propose her marriage, something that she immediately accepted, of course. On 28 July 1540, the same day in which Cromwell was executed, Henry and Catherine Howard got married. Henry was really happy of sharing his life with Catherine, but she did not feel the same because there was a vast difference in their ages. Unsatisfied, Catherine felt she needed her to be pleased, and it is said that she had several affairs with men who belonged to the court. One of these men was Thomas Culpeper, one of Henry's favorite courtiers. It is said that in 1541 she had a romance with him, and both sent each other secret love letters. However, it became to an end when Henry discovered one of the many letters they wrote to each other. Henry accused Catherine of adultery, and she was executed. Before her execution, it is said that Catherine told those present,
"I died as a queen, but I would rather have died as the wife of Culpeper."
One day, Henry was visiting Jane Seymour's grave and remembering how much he had loved her, knowing that she would not have been unfaithful of his wives. However, it just so happens that Thomas Seymour, Jane's brother, also decided to visit his sister's grave that day, together with his beloved Catherine Parr. He was so surprised to find that Henry was also there that he asked him about it. However, he did not receive any answer, because Henry was amazed with the beauty of Catherine and could not stop looking at her. It was in that moment when Henry decided that he wanted to marry Catherine. In that way, he required Catherine a moment so as to tell her his decision in private. Catherine accepted, but only with one condition. She wanted to tell herself the announcement to Thomas, and the king permitted it. When Catherine told Thomas that the king wanted her to marry him, Thomas became upset, but Catherine reassured him by telling that she loved him and she wanted to continue seeing him in secret despite the fact that she will be married. The 12th of July of 1543, Catherine Parr and Henry VIII married in the Hampton Court Palace, and Catherine became the first Queen of England and also of Ireland. During their marriage, Henry, being old, had many health problems, and Catherine had more a role of a nurse than of a wife. The 20th of January of 1547, Henry died because of overweight and his ulcer on the leg. Before dying, he ordered that Catherine should be considered Queen of England as if he was still alive. Thomas and Catherine attended together Henry's funeral, knowing for sure that now they could marry and live happily together.
If you feel like a room without a roof, clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Oh.